Welcome to Cats and Rats Podcast, covering your Florida Panthers.
Hey everyone, and welcome to our newest episode of the Cats and Rats Podcast, episode 3. We have a special guest here. This episode, we're going to get to that in just a second, but first, let's go to my co-hosts, Cody Stevens and Nick Levine. Cody, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. I mean, Panthers still cruising along. Had a tough game the last time out against Carolina, but that playoff type atmosphere, that's something invaluable. Loved the game from start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if those teams go out in the playoffs again, anything less than 6 or 7, I think they're doing a disservice to us and hockey fans.
Yeah, Cody, that's one of my favorite games that you can see in the regular season. I know it's a 0-0 game, but it had everything in it. Offensive scoring chances, which we're going to get into later here today, goaltending performances, a little playoff grit and intensity, some big hits, some perseverance by the Panthers as they lose Matthew Tkachuk and Gustav Forsling in that Carolina game. As of the recording of this podcast, we don't have a report, but that could be a good thing that maybe they're just both day to day. But yeah, that's my style of hockey. I love the game. And, the Panthers lose it late, but what can you do? Carolina gets one on us that they probably thought they could have had 1 or 2 of those last spring in the playoffs. So let's see if the Panthers can kind of regroup next matchup against Carolina in March. So how's it going? Yeah.
They were going to get one eventually on us like that. So, I mean, rather now than later.
Yeah. Nick, how's it going?
It's going very well. How are you, Kirby?
Not bad. So you guys were hosting Twitter post-game X Spaces for the Ottawa game, and then we all kind of convened together after the Carolina one. So yeah, just quickly, what are your thoughts here, Panthers of late?
I'll give my brief thoughts on the Ottawa one. I don't think we played particularly well in that one, and I think Paul Maurice in his post-game press conference said the same thing. He has to be happy with the effort in Carolina, though. It's an unfortunate result, kind of stings a little bit, no doubt, but I can't look at that game and be upset with that. That's a game you can replicate. That's the game we're going to have to play down the stretch into the playoffs if we're going to want to win.
Yep, and I kind of disagreed with you guys a little bit on the Ottawa game, but you guys were lock in step with Paul Maurice there that it wasn't one of their better games. But I really think I've been happy with all of our games since post All-Star break, going all the way back now to December 18th, the last road game they had lost previous to the Carolina one, which I was at in Calgary. All these road performances, you can't really complain one way or another. There's been a couple home stinkers along the way here and there, maybe the game against St. Louis there, but you're going way back to that one. So even in these losses, I've been pretty pleased with the Panthers. And again, winning streaks come to an end here this year. The road record will have to wait another time, another season. But again, it's something that the Panthers are able to build on. And even through some of these tough losses, these close losses, they're able to build on that. But gentlemen, let me introduce our first guest ever to the Cats and Rats podcast. A voice you may be familiar with, be it at the rink, may it be on our Twitter X postgame spaces, or even now at the beginning of our podcast, the voice you hear at the beginning of our intro as we come in on air here, Mr. Jon Acosta. How are you doing, John?
Hey guys, I'm doing well. It's a pleasure to be on this show. I think it's one of the go-to Panther podcasts out there, but beyond that, it's just a great community, great group of guys, and yeah, man, it's been great. It's been great, man. Thanks for having me.
For sure, John. And before we kind of go round table here in a little bit and talk about the Panthers of late in the season, people often come to me and they talk to me about their origin stories, how they kind of found us within the community. And you've told me it a little bit off air in the past, but so many people tell me, hey, Kirby, this is the time that I joined you guys in post-game spaces. And one of the big ones was the Matthew Tkachuk blockbuster trade night. My co-host that night was our girl Lex that you're familiar with, John, and of course Cody and Nick are as my co-hosts, and Cody and Nick were also in there that evening as well as speakers. I think that might have been Nick's first appearance on Spaces, if I'm not mistaken. The Tkachuk trade.
Yes,
it was, right? So I don't know if that dates to
it
was. Yeah, I don't know if that dates to around when you kind of came in, John, but if you just want to quickly kind of tell the audience what your story was of kind of connecting and finding us.
No, absolutely. You know what? I can't really put the pin on exactly when was the first time that I listened to you guys on the Spaces. I do know that the first time I spoke was beginning of last season, and I want to say it was right after the Philadelphia Flyers game. That was the home opener. It might have been later on in the season, but in any case, yeah, for sure, the Matthew Tkachuk trade was probably where I was like hooked. At that point, I don't think anybody else was doing Spaces at that level or whatnot. So it was really cool because number one, that trade happened in the middle of the night, and so you're constantly trying to find ways to consume content on what was going on, right? And no, I tell you, that was a huge experience, a great experience, because it's just people are reacting to the stuff that was coming out in real time, and like you didn't know what the overall trade details were, and I remember like in that Spaces, the details were coming out slowly and surely. We just knew that in the beginning we had traded for Matthew Tkachuk, and part of that trade was Jonathan Huberdeau. But like as the details started coming out, it was just really cool to see the live reaction, and that's one of the things that I've always loved to see people's live reaction to things like that. I remember even in this past off season, some of the free agent signings and how some of the reactions there. It was just really cool. But yeah, no, sports bring people together, and this Spaces community has been really awesome. Just to talk to. I mean, it's opened up a new world of networking and friendships with folks that I would have never had the opportunity to.
And I know,
meet.
Jon, you talked about to me before becoming just a listener. You were doing a lot of your music editing, some Anthem edit work, however you would want to phrase it. And you came in eventually as a speaker. And then when I saw you come in as a speaker, I was like, wow, like a Panthers Anthem singer is in here listening to us. And you kind of got the ball rolling on that, where, people from management and from the Marlins and different walks of life started to find us on this Spaces community. I think you were one of the first ones that kind of had a visible name within the community and in general in the Panthers community. So I kind of just wanted you to, it was awesome for me. And I always look back at that as a really cool moment. But before we kind of dig into the Panthers, I just want you to share your kind of Anthem origin story, how you came about being one of the main voices of the Florida Panthers that everyone hears sing the national anthem before puck drop, and maybe a cool story or two as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the overall origin, like I would like to tell this amazing, like God type of story or whatever, but really it was simple. I was scrolling on Twitter one day and I saw an audition link that the Panthers were holding to, have anthem singers. And I remember always having some type of feedback, comment, whether positive or negative, or a reaction towards, whoever was singing the anthem prior to game. So when I saw the link, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do this. Let's see what happens. And I wasn't truly expecting that everything that has transpired over the last year and a half or so to happen. It really was more of a let's see what happens type of a thing. And I remember recording the audition video, which it was just me in a Panther jersey, singing the national anthem. And then I get an email back. It's like, hey, can you also do the Canadian anthem? And mind you, I did not know the Canadian anthem back then. So my process was, and me being a professional musician, singer, my process to learn a song is I sit down, I write it by hand, write the lyrics down by hand. And as I'm doing that, I kind of memorize it, both melodically and lyrically. And so I send them back the Canadian anthem audition video, and basically was told, yeah, we're going to keep you in mind, and we'll let you know prior to the beginning of the season whether or not we'll invite you for an actual audition in person. And so then I get the invite to go in person. Funny story about that is I was so late. When I tell you, I was literally the last person in the audition area. And what was funny is that as I'm driving, and mind you, I live in West Palm, which is about a 40 to an hour drive to the arena. And what ended up happening is, as I'm driving, I'm like, I'm literally going to waste my time taking this drive because the audition's at 6 and it's 7:30 and I'm still driving.
It's all about
So
commute time down in South Florida. I've learned that.
absolutely,
Canada.
absolutely.
If he left on
it's hit
time,
and
you would have hit
miss.
work hour, so that wouldn't have been good either way.
Oh no, and that was exactly what happened. I mean, there was accidents, there was rain, the roads were wet, it was raining. And you know, in Florida, South Florida, when it rains even a little bit,
Everyone
people
forgets
just
how to
all
drive.
of a sudden forget. Exactly, they all forget how to drive.
My favorite.
So anyway,
I mean, driving with
as
their
I'm
emergency
driving,
flashers on.
yeah, absolutely, which is totally illegal, by the way. In any case, as I'm driving, I'm literally telling myself, I'm literally wasting my time doing this. And I kid you not, as I'm having this thought, a truck with a giant American flag drives right by me to my right. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's a sign. I'll just keep driving. And mind you, that happened in Boca. And so I figured, okay, I'll keep going. As I'm getting closer to the arena, same thing happened. I start getting negative to myself. I'm like, this is going to be the biggest waste of time. It's going to be such an embarrassment. I'm going to get there and they're going to tell me I can't audition because the auditions have already passed. And I kid you not, like, what are the odds of having another vehicle with a giant American flag plastered to it drive right by me? And at that point, I was like, okay, I'm not going to continue with this negativity. I'm going to show up. I'm going to see what happens. And hopefully, you know, it works out. I get there. I park. I parked in the wrong place. As I'm walking up to security, I finally get shown into the way to get in and whatnot. I get there, and I am literally the last person there. Now, mind you, they still hadn't finished with the people that were auditioning. So there was, from what I remember, there was about 150 people there. Not all of them were auditioning. Some of them were families. I think there was a total of 50 people that were auditioning to be on the rotation of, you know, the Florida Panther anthem singers. You know, there was people with saxophones, there was people with guitars, there was people, you know, just going in there to sing, and really good singers. So I'm not like like, I guess, shy about my abilities, but like there were some really good singers. In any case, I get there and it was great, and it honestly worked out pretty well. And you know, next thing you know, I got called in for a preseason game. That went well. And then they called me up for the home season opener. And at that point, it was just on a basis of availability. Like, I would get called and, hey, we had this person cancel. Can you make it? And I remember, I think, Cody, you said recently in a episode how the best ability is availability. And that was kind of like the process that I took it. And or the mentality that I had with it. And that was it, you know, just trying to make myself available, and eventually led towards being in a playoff game, and then another playoff game, which happened to be the most important playoff game prior to the win that we had in the Stanley Cup final.
Game 4 against Carolina.
Having been there for the Game 4 Carolina was just an incredible experience, you know. So yeah, and beyond all of that, it's just all the friendships, the networking, the connections that I've with folks. You know, it's opened up a whole new world that I just did not have access to, or just didn't know of, you know. So it's been really, really fun.
I know, Jon, we're going to have you back on like around playoffs, post playoffs in the summer, just to share some stories alone that you experienced last year on the miracle ride to the Stanley Cup final, and the new memories that are going to happen here in the near future, because now we're going to get into some Florida Panthers roundtable talk. This is what the feel is like in post game when Jon comes on and we have other speakers on. So we're just going to kind of free float here for a bit, kind of talk about our feelings on the Panthers. Are we feeling good? Are we apprehensive about some things? Well, you know, coming up to the deadline, we're going to get into that later in this podcast episode. Some more trade targets that we shared with you last episode. We'll share some new names this episode with you as we go along here. So I just kind of want to throw it around the table here. This is what we do in the post game. We usually break down Panther games as they're happening in the post game, and then we'll go through like deep dive on how the Panthers have been playing around the NHL and things like that. But Nick, I'm going to throw to you first. So wherever you want to take us with this Panthers team, I know in a little bit here, John, we're going to go a little deeper dive into goaltending, or when I throw it to you, John, we can even start to get into the goaltending position there, as it's been really strong this year. But yeah, Nick, where are you going to take us here?
So thank you very much, Kirby. John, just want to say, been a pleasure getting to know you over the last year, and some unbelievable stories there, obviously. And Kirby, I completely agree with you on the memories moving forward, because this is a team to really be excited about. There's been last season was a season of up and downs, right? But I think this is, in my opinion, the most consistently good Florida Panther season in franchise history in all aspects, particularly offensively and particularly defensively. Just to throw out some stats here, I'll go from the start of the new year, January 1st. The Panthers are 15-4-2, which for points percentage is third in the NHL. In this span, they're averaging 3.8 goals per game and only allowing 2.1 goals per game. They're actually allowing the second least amount of goals per game in the NHL. And the power play, a very controversial subject in our fan base, Kirby, Cody, Jon, as you know, is number one in the league in this span. That's
and remember, Nick, I said if we're top 8 or top 10, I will take that. I said that at the beginning of the season. And you just showed numbers right now, split numbers, but where we're the best. And then this season, we've been as high as what, 5th, 6th in the league?
Right now, currently, for power play percentage, we are 6th in the NHL. And it's kind of incredible to think, because there were, like, I think it was like 10, 15 games into the year, we were bottom. I think it was like 25, 24, something around that. We were really bad, and to be all the way to 6 now is unbelievable. Well, I do think that is incredibly important, because number one, 5-on-5, we know we generate a lot of chances, but as we saw in the Carolina game, we didn't get one past Kochetkov. You're going to need the power play to pick up some of the slack offensively. If you can't bury 1 5v5, you're going to need your power play to give you some energy. And I think it's important that the power play is clicking on all cylinders. Brandon Montour has been playing exceptionally well of late. And no, Sam Reinhart has cooled down here post All-Star break, but just overall, the components of the power play are coming together really well. Another factor that I wanted to talk about was the penalty kill. And this is something, Kirby, I've been talking about on Spaces for the last, what has it been, year plus, right?
Feels like 5 years, but yeah.
Yeah, but this is a key, because as much as people have said, oh, the power play cost us against Tampa, the series we got swept, which I do agree to a certain extent. I also think the penalty kill almost lost us the Washington series as well. And I think that in particular is something that was a key emphasis for Paul Maurice coming in. Like, for an example, right? Washington's power play, I think I have the stats right here, was at 29.2% in the 6-game series. So that's not good enough, as we know, for the Panthers to penalty killing. That we cannot allow that. And it almost cost us the Boston series too.
I'm about to say Boston was clicking at a bigger clip than us.
Yes. So like these series, even though I thought Boston was particularly our best series, that almost cost us because of our penalty kills. So having this penalty kill this year, play the way it has been, and I know it got off to a rough start, and then it has that one off against Minnesota. Power play.
But again, we're going to get into goaltending later with John. Yeah. Bob let in a couple there that he could have had.
But the penalty kill is at 83.3%, which is 4th in the NHL. And they're right behind the team that I have wanted them to emulate for the last year, and that's Carolina. We saw last year in the playoffs, Carolina was very over-aggressive in the penalty kill, and that cost them some.
Now, Cody has a phrase that he uses a lot on our post-game show.
But
when we play them, what is it, Cody?
Watching those two teams play against each other is like looking at a mirror. I mean,
it's crazy to think that, Cody, that we are now that defensively sound.
And I think that our penalty kill. Obviously, we've gotten incredible goaltending, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. Is we found a good balance between aggressiveness and discipline on that level. We're not overly aggressive on the penalty kill, but we're not as conservative as we once were. And I think a big part of that is the mobility of our defensemen this year. Coming into the season, Kirby, you remember the conversations we've had. We were very comfortable with our penalty killing forwards. The big question was our penalty killing defensemen, right?
Yep. And how they're going to look as units together.
And
out
I
there.
think obviously Gustav Forsling's had an incredible season, but Aaron Ekblad has also had a bounce back season. And
I think Aaron Ekblad's been the best when it comes to penalty killing. I know
Aaron
you guys say
Ekblad's-
stuff power play, 5v5. I think penalty killing, that's been his
Aaron
best.
Ekblad has had a bounce back season, and most notably, how good he has been on the penalty kill, as you just mentioned. Nico Mikkola on the back end. These are defensemen.
Nico Mikkola has got the puck so many times and won 50-50 battles and cleared it and rimmed it around the ice. And that kills 20, 30, 35 seconds sometimes there.
Right.
You know,
and another point I want to mention is faceoffs, right? So in last season, we know that the faceoffs necessarily were not terrific. And I think Anton Lundell improved his faceoff percentage as the season went on and into the playoffs. But as far as faceoff percentage goes, we were 22nd in the NHL at just a shade under 49% in the faceoff circle last season. This year for faceoffs, we're 10th in the NHL at 51.1%. So that was the biggest change. And I really think that DC simple plays, winning the draw, clearing the zone, and just, you know, once you get the puck out of the zone on a penalty kill, it's very hard to get set back up again. I think that was the biggest key. We were losing so many key draws. And I remember early in that Boston series,
we were losing battles. We weren't quick enough to pucks, which was our defense.
Charlie Coyle was unbelievable in the faceoff circle, and that was without Bergeron and Krejci. So I think that if we're going to want to have the continued success that we've had, we're going to, obviously need to get this goaltending that we've been getting. Number two, just keep generating these chances 5-on-5. I'm a believer that these pucks are going to go in sooner or later. And then the other aspect of that is the special teams. Both power play and penalty kill have been tremendous this year. We're both a penalty kill 4th, power play 6th. About as good as you could ask for. So it's just a crazy thought, obviously, with where we've been the last 2 years, on each issue, where maybe we've been good on one, on either the power play or the penalty kill for some point in time, never both combined. And I think that's a very scary combination when you mix in this goaltending and the way we play 5-on-5 and our stylistic play as well. So
and I think the penalty kill is very key with the division we're in. Toronto's power play, Tampa's power play, Boston. They might not move it around like Toronto and Edmonton have in the past, but they're effective in moving the puck around on the outside and getting to shooters and shooting.
And Carolina has one of the top power plays in the league as well. So
that's sneaky.
So again, the Rangers are another one. If we're going to go on a deep run, these are teams we're going to face. So it's going to be key that the penalty kill has to be on point.
Cody, I want you to add anything defensively. We're going all around here, and then we're going to go to Jon for some goaltending, as Jon's part of our goaltending union.
Speaking defensively, the guy you guys didn't even name, like, the guy who's been arguably our best defenseman in the last 3 games prior to the recording of this podcast.
What, the name that I've been throwing around?
What, Dmitry Kulikov?
Yeah, that's my guy. Is it him?
Yeah, I mean, he's been playing out of his mind.
He's back to where he was with Mikkola at the beginning of the season, Cody.
Yeah, and I mean, back to Mikkola, he's been doing great work with the puck, but
yes,
he's had 3 or 4 pizzas in the last couple of games. He's skyrocketed the pizza leaderboards. He's now 2nd.
Yeah, he's got to clean up those turnovers against Ottawa there. There was another one with previous to that game, I believe.
Yeah.
And, you know, Bob's been saving the defense, whether it's a Mikkola bad turnover pizza, as you say, the first pairing with Forsling and Ekblad, guys getting behind them, bad pinches. At times with the third pairing, I've noticed where, you know, they're losing puck battles and just getting worked over. And that's good that OEL's had a good year, but now that Kulikov's playing a little bit better, now that pairing isn't hurting us as much as in our own zone. And like you said with Montour, his weakness is when he's stationary and can kind of get lost in his own zone, and other teams that are good teams are playing that cycle game. So everyone kind of has their weakness on defense, but like when we get to Jon here in a second, it's Bobrovsky, it's our goaltending that cleans up a lot of those mistakes. But Cody, I'm seeing mistakes by the defense, and I don't want our fan base to just think we're super elite. We don't need to add anyone. Don't rock the boat. Don't change anything. There needs to be change and adjustments happening, and that's with personnel. If
last year proved anything, it proved that you needed depth. Not because what happened to the Panthers that got hurt. Did you not see Vegas?
How deep they were, how they shot block,
unbelievably how much depth they had. All 4 lines were rolling, and that was part of the problem here of late. We've seen the 4th line get, and I've talked about this a lot, 10, 11, 12 minutes. Now that's more than the 4th line would probably get in crunch time and down the stretch and into the playoffs. But that 4th line, Kirby, for us was playing 5-6 minutes a night, while Vegas's 4th line was playing 8.5, 9 minutes a night. That adds up. And when you're going through this long grind of a season and you're playing your top players that much, and I'm not saying your top players shouldn't play the most, they absolutely should, but you need to have some sort of depth where you could kind of, take the pressure off, like the guys like Barkov and Kachuk and all these other guys, because that's what Vegas did. That 4th line wore us down.
Yeah.
But let's bring it back to the defense here, gentlemen. Cody, and then we're going to go to Jon with goal.
And I mean, the defense, all 6 guys are playing really good as a unit. It is eons better than what we had last year. But we do need, in my opinion, we need to add one more defenseman at the trade deadline next year, plus 1 forward. Because for those of you who are apprehensive about adding at the trade deadline, let me ask you something. Here's some guys from last year's trade deadline that were traded, and for right around the picks that we would have to give up in order to make some moves. Let's start with let's see. What about Vladislav Nemestikov? Great 2-way winger, could play center. He was acquired for a 4th-round pick. How much better do you think the Panthers would be if they had him on their lineup last year, especially in the Stanley Cup Finals? That makes a difference. And then you also have Curtis Lazar, acquired for a 4th-round pick last year as well. Those 2 guys may not be flashy names, but those 2 guys, when it comes down to it, when let's say someone goes down, and you are more comfortable with those guys stepping up the lineup than, let's say, Nick Cousins or Ryan Lomberg. And that's why we need to add depth. And especially if we lose a D, let's say we lose Mikkola. Mahura's the first guy in.
And we don't have a Mikkola replacement, what he brings.
Yeah.
Currently.
But let's say if we did. Let's say we added the deadline and okay, that means Kulikov's our 7th. So all right, Kulikov jumps in.
Yep. But then he's not going to do as much as Mikkola, and that's why we need a Mikkola type guy that I'm big on, Cody, because we have Lucas Carlson that plays the power play. We have other guys down in the A that can log some minutes or play 5v5. We don't really have that middle pairing Mikkola type. If he goes down with an injury, who do you replace him with? Dmitry Kulikov? I don't think that's good enough.
Yeah, but I think, like I said, that means you wouldn't want the guy that Nick's been clamoring for the last 5 months.
Yeah, Kirby, come on. Just say his name.
We've said him enough from the Philadelphia Flyers.
For those who don't know, we're mentioning Nick Seeler.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the defense has been beautiful, but like I said...
I just worry about the injury thing and the depth thing.
With the trade deadline looming, we need to add. I mean, name me the last Stanley Cup champion who stood pat at the deadline. You will not. It will take you a little bit. Because Vegas, they added Barbashev last year. And Tampa, who could forget? The Coleman, the Goodrow, the Savard trades. The Colorado with Arturi Lehkonen and Josh Manson.
Yeah, all defensemen. There's defensive pieces there that you've mentioned across the board, outside of Vegas. But Vegas, you look at what they had last year.
They didn't need anything.
We don't have that. We have guys playing really well, but again, Forsley goes down, you can have Montour step up and play some minutes, but he's right-handed just like Ekblad is. So you run into these different problems that you have if you lose guys within a series and stuff. And people are forgetting, like, we had guys banged up, they played through those injuries, but this year that might not be the case. They might not be able to play through them. Then you're in trouble.
I mean, what about a Kachuk leg injury? Broken the sternum. You can't play through that.
Yep. And some of these guys, it's reoccurring stuff from last year that can pop up this year. So, you know, Montour off-season surgery, Bennett off-season surgery, Ekblad off-season surgery, different things like that. Barkov, he goes down from time to time. You know, the Kachuk situation that we're dealing with right now as well. So, you know, that's the thing. I'm more worried about that on the defensive end, but we'll see, right? So, anything else there, Cody, on the defensive before
I mean,
move on?
all the guys are playing well. Montour started to get back that confidence from last year, especially in that Carolina game where I saw him jumping up in the rush, trying to create plays. His shot isn't all there, but that could be due to the fact that had shoulder surgery the offseason. That limits your shot. So that could very well be limited to it. And I mean, he got to work through the kinks like everyone else has, and I think he deserves that little bit of time. Ekblad started to get back, jump up into the offense more. Forsling, there's nothing more you can say about him. He's been nothing short of phenomenal this year. And then Mikkel has been the perfect Gudas replacement, except with a lot more size. And the bottom pair just continuing to be just serviceable. And besides that, I mean, defense-wise, I think Florida's in a good spot, but once again, maybe in a lot better spot if they added about one name at the deadline.
Yeah. And we're going to get into that in a little bit here, guys, with our trade deadline targets. I think we're going to go around the table. We'll all have a name there. But before we get to the goaltending position with Mr. Jon Acosta, I'd just like to let everyone know about Caneswear. Caneswear is more than a store. It's an experience. They have a huge selection of items for all your favorite South Florida home teams. Items from Adidas, 47, Brand, G-3, New Era, Fanatics, and more. Sizes for men, women, kids, babies, and even pets. If you're going to the game or watching on TV, only one local place to get your cat's gear. So get over to Caneswear, located at 2655 South University Drive. Again, that's 2655 South University Drive in Davie, Florida. And of course, always open on pantherswear.com. Again, that's pantherswear.com. Caneswear, the spot where South Florida sports fans shop. All right, we kind of talked about the forwards here and a little bit about the defense as we've kind of done a little roundtable discussion here. Now, one of the reasons I brought Jon on for this episode 3, and it's great timing, by the way, how the Panthers goaltending has been this season. You could argue borderline exceptional. We've had a goalie that's gone to an all-star game, backup goaltender that has filled in for our once backup goaltender that is in Charlotte trying to get his game together and get his form together there on and off the ice, and our backup goaltender has given us a lot of good quality starts as well. And something that Jon loves to talk about when we come in is kind of the goaltending position, kind of the technique, what he's seeing out there. We've got some numbers to back it up, and I know Nick's got some there that he's going to throw our way. But again, Jon, what have you thought about the Panthers goaltending position as a whole? You can get into Bobrovsky, Stolarz, take this wherever you want to go, but it's been a beautiful thing this year, and I love that we're giving the goaltenders some love this year in our post-game spaces, how they've really have at times led our team, you know, and I don't think it gets enough recognition on today's social media, on today's hockey landscape. People are always like, well, if I didn't play the goaltending position, I can't speak of it. I never grew up in that era where if you didn't play the goaltending position, you couldn't speak of it. It's one of those things when the goalie voodoo thing that gets thrown around out there. Bob's progression from the time he came into Florida was difficult at points. Last year, he got it together on that major playoff run, and he's kind of continued where he led off, Jon, here in the playoffs. And I think it's due to like the defense that he has behind him. It's reminiscent of what he had in Columbus.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think just right off the bat with Bob, one of the things that is a characteristic of his is just his sheer intensity as a professional, his ability to work hard and set himself into the position, not just as a professional, but when it comes to saving shots. Like his positioning is probably one of the best traits of his game as a whole. But yeah, no, the whole goaltender thing has been something that for me has been a passion, in part because I recently took on goaltending, just here amateurly beer league, which again, that's kind of like a double positive, double negative, depending how you look at it. Beer league, amateur. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing, right? But no, the thing about goaltending is it's very foreign because, like you said, Kirby, the whole concept of don't mess with the goaltender if it's good, and not having the ability to speak into goaltending, and just the sheer nature of just how volatile people's reactions towards the performance of a goaltender. I mean, you got cases all over the NHL right now. I mean, I think Ottinger right now is going through a little bit of a slump with Dallas, and we all know what Otter is capable of doing. But the mental side of goaltending is one of the things that doesn't get talked enough about, because really the mentality of a goaltender and the mentality of goaltending in general, it's just you're constantly thinking. It's probably one of the most cerebral sports positions to my knowledge. I think almost at the same degree as a quarterback in football, because a quarterback is doing something very similar that goaltenders are doing, is that they're scanning the field of play, they're scanning their zones, they're scanning where they're going with the puck. In goaltending is a little different because you're scanning the plays, you're scanning where your players are, you're communicating to your defense,
which doesn't get talked about enough. The communication of
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that the success of a good defensive structure isn't just about having your best defensemen, but it's also having defensemen that are able to communicate effectively with the goaltender, and not just defensemen but forwards as well, as we all know they form a part of the complete team structure defensively. And it's one of the things that I've learned. Like, I grew up playing soccer, so my background as a soccer goalie, and even at some point I also played center defense and striker. Communication is always key on the field. You're always talking about making runs in certain diagonal angles. You're always talking about, okay, who's got who, where you're marking. You're thinking about zones. You're thinking about who are the players that you're playing against. What kind of a shot do they have? Like, as a goaltender, both in soccer and hockey, I'm thinking about what foot is the person who's about to kick the ball. Is he left-footed? Is he right-footed? With hockey, same thing. Is he a left shot? Is he a right shot? Because all those little details, those as many as they are, will determine what kind of a save selection you need to make, not just in hockey but in soccer as well. And so there's so much thinking that has to happen, and then on top of that, you have to think about the physical strain that goaltending is on a goaltender. Like, you think about,
I was going to get that with Bobrovsky's technique and how much work and preparation goes into that, and how diligent of a player he is, not only on the ice but off the ice. It dates all the way back to Roberto Luongo, where they're like, that guy's one of our best conditioned athletes. That guy puts in so much work. That's what we have with Bobrovsky now.
Absolutely. And the thing about Bobrovsky, as far as weight goes, he's not a heavier guy in any shape or form, but he is probably one of the most athletic and rubbery. By rubbery, I mean the guy just has a flexibility and ability to do things that most humans aren't able to or shouldn't be able to do. And all that has to do with his preparation, because a goaltender can't just show up on the ice and just be expected to stop pucks. There's so much preparation before the skates. There's so much preparation that's happening throughout the week before games.
Yep.
And the thing about Bob too is his intensity on the ice is something like you could really see in different moments, whether when the team has just won a game or when the team lets in a soft goal or whatever. It's very evident, just how important, Bob looks at the mental side of things, and just how volatile it can be when you have a goaltender who's so cerebral and he's so intense in doing stuff. Like I think, one of the things about Bob is, I think he really was hard on himself at first when he first got here, having career lows and save percentage when it comes to the combination of games played and whatnot.
Yeah, and he was playing behind the worst defense he ever played behind either.
Exactly. And that right now, what's interesting is, and this is not something I realized until recently, Bob's save percentage and goals against average was actually lower last year than it was the year before that. And I would think a lot of that has to do with Bob struggled at the beginning of the season, and so did the team defensively. There was a lot of games that, I can remember a few of them. There was a game against Columbus. There was a game against, there's a few teams that, just right off the top of my mind, that the team just struggled defensively to where, the stats didn't show the greatness that Bob showed later on in the season into the playoffs and the inevitable Stanley Cup run. And what's interesting now is that I feel like he really has continued the form that he had. And he said so himself. Like when they interviewed him, he mentioned that he learned more in this season that just happened than he had his entire career. And that says a lot because this guy's been in the league for a long time. And his just ability to, overcome all the adversity that, I mean, mind you, he was benched essentially for Alex Lyon in the beginning of the Boston series.
John, on our post-game shows, and you've been in those a lot, and Cody was my main co-host last year, how many times people were writing Bob off? I was one of the guys that said you should start him and go to Lyon later in that Boston series if you have to, because, even though Lyon's not a young guy, he's 29, 30 years old, he was the young guy in a sense that he didn't have the experience. And it's like you go with the veteran in Bob. A lot of people are like, I don't trust him right now. He's coming back from injury. I don't know what he's going to give us. So many fans have discounted him and not trust him over this. And I don't know if that's to do with the contract. I don't know if it's that they're not seeing the goals that are going in, Cody, that have been the fault of the defense in the past, not just Bob's fault, but also Bob's playing better as well, too. And there's some accountability there, Cody.
Yeah, and I mean, Bob, like Bob deleted social media after his first season in Florida, where like he decided he needed like a mental reset because the first season, that whole season was just a roller coaster. I mean, just full of inconsistencies. We would win 5 and lose 6, win 3, lose 2, and then we can't But I remember in the back half of that year, Chris Driedger took over the starting role because remember,
and another key part of that is Bobrovsky was a healthy scratch. He was in the press box in his second year with Q in that Tampa series. We went to 6 games. It was Bob started the first game, then Driedger started, and then Knight came in. Right, Bobrovsky was in the press box.
It went game 1 Bob, then game 2 I think we went to Driedger. And then game 3, we stuck with him, but he got lit up. And then we went back to Bob. We won that game in OT. Game 4, we got lit up again. And then game 5, that's when Knight came in.
The thing about Bob, and you mentioned how he had a mental reset. There's actually some insight there because really there was an issue that he was dealing with, and it's just the reality of that pro athletes all end up in this situation where when they're struggling, it's really hard to get out of that rut, and it takes a lot of tenacity for you to believe in yourself again. And I think that really with what Paul Maurice was able to accomplish, him being the grizzled veteran coach that he is, was somehow able to accomplish resetting the confidence that Bob had. And honestly, even with the beginning of last year's, I truly think that Bob not starting the series against Boston was more about honoring Alex Lyon and what he had done, because truly, I don't think Florida gets into the playoffs if it wasn't for that run that Alex Lyon went on. and it's more of a, if you were to go with Bob and it didn't go well, I think you're doing more harm to the team than by giving Lyon his shot, because I really think he deserved it. Now, evidently, they ended up going to Bob, and that ended up being the right choice. But like, imagine if they had gone to Bob, and then now you're in a situation where you're down 1 or 2 games, depending, assuming that he didn't come back and win those games, right? But it's, again, the goaltending position is just so cerebral, and when you think about just how much those guys put themselves through, and then you go through the games that, like we saw later in the playoffs, that, what was it? Was it a 3 overtime game or 4 overtime
the
game
4
against
overtime
the
game.
Hurricanes?
Yeah, and I mean,
Like
that was the
that game
gauntlet.
alone tells you just how much mental tenacity it takes for a goaltender. Because I mean, dude, the guy played.
Yeah, we're not talking about the defense, or we're not talking about Matthew Tkachuk if he doesn't make a save here or there.
Absolutely, and there was plenty of those. And really, like, by the time the Panthers won that series, like, part of the reason I don't think they lost to Vegas because of goaltending in any shape or form.
It's just Bob. It's just Bob became human, and there's other reasons there.
And it was just depth. It was depth. Like, their team was so much deeper. I mean, part of that you can thank to having Mark Stone on LTIR, and them having the cap space to, to do what they did with Barbashev, and truly, like, you want to hate the game and hate the moves that they made and everything, but at the end of the day, any GM in that position with a star like Mark Stone going down is going to do the same thing. So, like, at some point, it's one of those things. Yeah, you can criticize what they did, but the reality is the game is won in a team fashion. Like, if you don't have the depth, and truly that Vegas team, I don't think any team was going to, make a dent in that team. That team was a wagon towards when by the time it came to.
Yeah, I don't buy all the injuries, and we would have had them and all that. I never bought that. Nick. Yep.
I also wanted to just talk about one other thing. A lot of people talk about the playoffs last year. I think Bobrovsky's been our best player in the playoffs each of the last 2 seasons. He was excellent in the 21-22 playoffs, the series against Washington and Tampa.
Yep.
He was really good, really solid, and then last year is obviously exceptional. But another part where I don't think a lot of people, this guy's, what is he, 35 years old, and he's third in the NHL fourth in the NHL in games started. He's third in the NHL in wins. He's ahead of guys in terms of starts and wins. He's ahead of Connor Hellebuck. He's ahead of Igor Shesterkin. He's ahead of Ottinger. He's ahead of Sorokin. Now, obviously, there's injuries to some of these guys and whatever, not whatsoever, but I think the main thing we could talk about here is how much of a workhorse he has been. And obviously, Anthony Stolarz, he's been terrific. I'm not taking anything away from him, but Bobrovsky, we've really had to lean on him this season. And no matter how many games in a row he started, he has been tremendous.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing with Stolarz is I really think that Stolarz was good in Anaheim, but when he got here, him being around Bob really has benefited his game, and you could see it. And I think in a certain sense, Bob's game also hugely benefited Alex Lyon, just because of the things that Bob does well that really I don't think anybody does it as well as him, such as the skating ability, the ability to recover when things go south. The other thing is just the ability to stay calm in a pressure situation. I mean, Stolarz, I think the first couple starts was a little shaky and with some of those elements. But
Chicago game there, the Islander game.
Yep. And I think he's really come around, and
ever since the Anaheim game at home, I think he's been.
Well, that was his last bad game. I mean, he's like his last couple, like Philly, he just got left out to dry.
Mm-hmm.
But like he's been great, and like back and like we're not as high in the standings as we are without Stolarz. And I mean, I don't think like being a backup goaltender is so crucial, especially in today's NHL.
Yep, you're not seeing the workhorse goalies anymore. They're playing 75 games. And
there's one this year and it's Alexander Georgiev in Colorado. But that's just due to the fact that their backup is legitimately almost unplayable because they lost Pavel Francouz at the beginning of the year. He's done for the year, and he's played.
Yeah, they had a backup that they let go on waivers, I believe, as well.
Yeah, and then remember when we played them in Denver, we played against that same backup, Provetstov, and we lit him up like a Christmas tree. And Georgiev had to come in. I mean, the Colorado Avalanche have played 58 games. Georgiev's appeared in 47 of them. 47.
Yeah, you don't see that too often.
That's insane.
Like goaltender burnout, like a huge thing. And Stolarz has been the perfect backup. And I mean, he's the best goalie in the NHL on the road, which is crazy to even say, but the stats don't lie.
Yeah, the other thing about Stolarz is his height and just his overall size. This guy, I mean, his butterfly flare. So when he drops down to his butterfly, his pad wingspan is basically post to post without even trying. Like, it's insane just how big the guy is. And then when you're in front, so like some of the times that I've sung the anthem, like as he's walking out, you know, I get to see the players come out and whatnot. As he's walking out, you just get a picture of just how big the guy is. He's just absolutely massive, a massive human being. And when you're on the ice, and Cody and Nick, you guys and Kirby, you guys will know better because I'm assuming you guys played on the ice enough to know that when you have a goalie who's just outright huge, and you got to take shots on a guy like the net seems a heck of a lot smaller with a guy that size.
Yeah, I played goalie. I played goalie where the other goalie, and I'm a 6'1". I'm a pretty decent sized guy. They just look like they've got body armor on, and I'm like out there with barely nothing. I'm sometimes wearing a guy's equipment that's 5'8" or 5'10", and just putting that gear on, you know. And it's like there's no room to see them. And some of those guys are 6'3" or 6'5", and it's like you can imagine what you have to shoot at, right?
I don't have to block as many shots when the tall goalie's behind me.
Exactly. You know, the other thing is, I'd be curious, and again, I can't quantify it just off the top of my head, but I'd be curious to know or look at an analysis of Stolarz's depth on shots at the beginning of the season versus what it is currently, because I did notice the last game he played, he was coming out pretty far out from where he normally is. Because think about,
he gets caught in the net though, John, where his pads inside the net, and there's sloppy technique that I can see with my own like naked eye. Versus when Bobrovsky's in net, he's very precise with those movements, and when Bobrovsky's off, you notice it. But he's usually on. He's usually on.
Usually
right?
When
Stolarz
a
little all over the place. And that's
Yeah.
where some fans are kind of critical of Stolarz.
Yeah.
He swims in the net, the pad's inside the net, he's deep in the net. That's not by design like a goalie like Henrik Lundqvist. That's kind of him losing his net and losing his angles and things like that. And that's why that's the difference between a starting goaltender and a backup goaltender.
Yeah, and the thing about Bob is, like, one of his biggest traits is just how far he comes out. The way he's able to take away shots,
his push
and
off,
just come out like way in front on the top of the crease, and sometimes beyond that. And Stolarz, I felt like at the beginning he was playing a little too deep, which is part of the reason why he'd end up swimming in front of his own net and whatnot.
Get beat by some bad angle shots.
Yeah,
like
but
that.
I don't like, guys, the amount of cardio and just sheer willpower that you have to be, instead of just getting down to your butterfly, to actually get up and skate as far out front of the crease as you can to pretty much take away any shot at the goal, at the shot from going into the goal. Like, it takes so much to do that. And these guys just do it so effortlessly. I will say, though, because of Stolarz's size and weight and whatnot, you can tell, especially towards like middle to end of third periods, when he has to come down and get back up, like you could see he's laboring a bit. And with Bobrovsky too, same thing. Like, when he's off, it's because he's fatigued. And And I tell you, goaltender fatigue, it's a real deal. And the reality is we're gonna have to rely on Stolars for at least another 30 to 40% of the games remaining in the regular season, just to keep Bob fresh enough to where he's not fatigued come playoff time and sharp enough to where he's going to be on his game at its highest point.
Yep. Some of the back-to-backs and other starts as well, Cody. But anything in closing on the
I
goaltender position here?
I have a little trivia question for you guys to show how far the Panthers have come in the goaltending department, eh?
All right.
So we can all agree that the dark years for the Panthers of this decade were in back-to-back seasons, 2012-13, 2013-14. Can we agree on that? Where we had a combined
one of the many dark years, in my
We had a
opinion.
Me and John have many.
we had a listen, I don't think they're as dark as these ones because we had a combined
okay. Alex
40
Alt, anyone?
44 wins in 2 years. And that is as a team, 44 wins.
Jeez.
I want you to name me. There's two questions to this. There were 6 goalies that started for the Panthers in this timeline. Name me the top 3 in wins and all 6 that have played.
Nick.
The top 3.
I'm horrible
wins.
on yours.
I got a couple. Jose Theodore.
That is
Scott
one.
Scott Clemenson.
That is 2.
And
Is this Dan
Jacob
Ellis?
Markstrom.
Is this Dan Ellis era?
That is 3.
Okay, Jacob Markstrom.
That is 4.
Okay, now this is gonna get a little.
I want to say
guy,
Tim Thomas was
Tim Thomas.
Tim
Yeah,
Thomas is 5. Who is the last one?
This is 2013, 2014.
I'm trying to think who
this
was
is from
Thomas's
2012 to 2014.
A Finnish goaltender?
No.
Was that? No, that wasn't him.
Nick will get it.
Harry Sateri?
Incorrect.
That's why I said Finnish goalie. That's what I was thinking.
Harry Sateri was with
I'm
the
trying
New
to think.
Jerseys.
Was this guy in 2013-14?
Yes.
Michael Hutchinson was after that, I believe.
Yes. Hutchinson was after. You guys.
Okay.
You guys.
Luongo, right?
Incorrect. Luongo. I'm surprised.
Yeah.
I always miss the
I
obvious.
was about to say, wait a minute. Like,
Well, who were the top 3 in wins?
well, I'm gonna go with. Oh my gosh, we didn't win very much. So,
Tim Thomas, maybe.
Tim Thomas would have to be.
He is first
that does.
with 16.
Yeah. Okay. Is Luongo third?
Incorrect. Luongo's not even in the top 3.
Okay. Well, then it's Jose Theodore, right?
Incorrect. Jose Theodore's not in the top 3.
I don't think Markstrom got enough wins, did he?
I don't know.
Markstrom is second.
Wow.
What?
That we were bad.
Is it? Yeah, Clemenson then?
And Clemenson's third.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you're right. That really is a dark year.
Clemenson gave me some scary moments, like some fans.
Kirby, you don't.
Stolars.
And
Kirby,
a little
you don't
bonus
miss.
question.
Kirby, you don't miss those red pads.
No, I don't think he had the best goals.
Remember when he got to Dallas and
No.
had the red mask with the green jersey and the
Oh my
red pads?
gosh.
The greatest
Oh,
goalie
my
setup
gosh.
of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was throwing even Clemenson.
And
into
I
that.
have and here's a good question. Dan Ellis started 5 games, played in 6. Could you guys give me a guess on what you think his save percentage was?
Yeah, it was like I don't know, 78.
I would say
780.
sub 800.
I'm gonna go 837.
Nick is the closest, 0.1 off, 836.
Oh my gosh.
Better than I thought. Oh.
And
Yeah, that was a short experiment, just like Michael Hutchinson, a couple other guys in that mix
Yeah.
later on.
That's the year we had like TJ Brennan and all those other guys. Oh my gosh.
yeah, and
Oh.
I mean, I'll give it last question. Who led that team? Who was 4th on that team in points? Because Bukestad led with 38.
Sean Matthias.
Oh my good. Wait a minute. Time out.
Scotty Upshaw.
Bukestad. Listen. Okay, for those Panther fans listening, say that again, Cody.
Who is 4th in points? Bukestad led with 38 points.
I know one.
Bukestad led with 38 points.
Kachuk had that in a month, and
I know one
that
guy.
led our team.
Insanity.
Jimmy Hayes is one of my guesses.
Incorrect. I'll give you this hint. This guy was known for one thing, and when he did this one thing, Goldie made sure to remind us he was good at this one thing.
Oh, boy.
Think
For
St.
Bad
Louis
Boys?
Blues.
Oh,
St. Louis Blues.
Wait, did you say boys?
I did, yes.
You would be correct. Brad Boys.
Yeah.
30.
Is it this shootout, the 5-hole?
Yes, the shootout.
I figured.
At the time he was with the Panthers, he was like first in NHL history in like shootout goals.
Brad Boys
And-
moved around a bit. He might not have moved around as Mike Sillinger or some other players from the past,
Yep.
former Panther as well, but
Yep.
yeah, he moved around.
And just to name some other guys that played for the Panthers. Ryan Whitney.
Yeah.
Scott
memorable.
Gomez.
That's crazy.
Wasn't
I remember
Tom
Scott
Gilbert
Gomez
on
the
that team?
Panthers.
Yes, and my favorite player of all time, Jesse Winchester.
Oh my gosh. Dude,
So
that's
for
ridiculous.
those of you who are upset about a Carolina loss,
Yeah, I could
over.
bring on from our Spaces communities, Johnny Films, Alejandro. We'll go back even to the 2000s there, John. early 2000s, and then
No, early
late
2000s.
90s.
Actually, I have a story about the early 2000s. There was a game that occurred, which I think has, even to this day, has been tattooed in my brain in a certain sense as trauma. And this was a game that, mind you, growing up, I didn't have cable at home, so the way I would watch games was really not watch them. I would listen to them on my little portable radio in my room, kind of like without my parents knowing that I was still awake. But it was a game that happened January 11th, 2003 against the Washington Capitals, a game that ended 12-2. Capitals over the Panthers.
hey,
I remember no, we didn't get shut out, big whoop. It was actually a funny fact. It was tied for Yager's best point total in a single game. He scored 7 points total, 3 goals and 4 assists in that game. But that game specifically has just always been, I've never been able to let go of it. As a matter of fact, I even spent hours recently trying to find game film of that game, which I can't find anywhere.
Some fights and some other parts.
Yeah, it was one of the crazier games, but I remember like hearing over and over and over again the Washington Capitals goal siren or horn or whatever. It was so ingrained in my brain. But what's the funny story? Recently, I had actually had a chance to skate in a kind of an alumni and Joe Schmo type of skate where, you got to play with alumni or whatever. And I asked this question because one of the guys who was there was Stéphane Matteau. Now, do any of you guys ever remember Stéphane Matteau playing for the Panthers at any point?
I just remember him scoring for the Rangers.
Yeah, I even told John that I don't really have major recollection of him.
In 03, this was the last year of Stéphane Matteau's career, and he did it with the Panthers. Matteau was at the skate, and I happened to ask him about this very game. And he was like, he looks at me, points at me, and said, funny you should mention that game, he said. Mike Keenan, who was our coach back then, told Matteau pretty much to stay home, that he wasn't going to go on the trip. And actually, he got optioned to San Antonio. And he basically said, you know what? You're just going to stay home or whatever. And so he did that. Then the game happens. The Panthers lose 12-2. Matteau didn't even watch the game, he said. And then he tells me that he texted Luongo the next day. He's like, hey, man, how did it go? How was the game? And Luongo didn't even respond to the text because, like, mind you, this was a game that was supposed to be a scheduled rest day for Roberto Luongo, and his backup started. Can any of you guys guess the name of the backup goaltender for Luongo in this game?
Oh, I don't know. Jamie McLennan was one of his backups, but then I don't know.
And mind you, this is 03.
Alex Auld.
This was after.
He was not with Luongo.
No, this was after Trevor Kidd had already left.
I don't know. There's Mike Vernon, Sean Burke.
So
Steve Shields?
Nope.
Give me
The name of this guy.
Give me.
I'll give you another couple guesses. He is a Finnish goaltender, but he's not the one that I mentioned earlier.
Oh, I know this. Yanni Hermi.
Yanni Hermi.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yanni Hermi.
Oh.
He had, I think it was like 8 total goals against, and the rest, Luongo for coming on in relief, not exactly terrible, only letting go 4.
That's the type of game you don't even
yeah.
eat dinner afterwards.
Oh yeah, no. At that point, force the team to drive back or go back home on a bus as opposed to on a plane, right? But no, that was just I don't know, for whatever reason. Like anytime I see, and for all the newer fans out there, like this is the kind of game that was very typical for the Panthers to experience, especially in that season. Now, mind you, not every game was 12-2, but this is one of those games that honestly, whenever you look at a team. When you look at our team now and, we lose here and there, it'll never be this, at least not for the next 4 or 5 years.
For the foreseeable
we'll
future,
never experience. I mean, we experienced it somewhat President Trophy year when we lost against the Canadians, but let's be real, guys. Everything was in the bag. There was no reason to play that game, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, at least we're resting our guys then.
John,
exactly.
You led me into our last segment here very quickly. Great segue. We never planned it this way. Our trade deadline targets, we gave a few last podcasts. I'm just going to give mine really quickly here, and if everyone can give theirs quickly. Current Washington Capitals, so kind of ties into John's segment there. Anthony Mantha has emerged at the top of my trade deadline board. Mantha, right winger, is a big body presence.
I like
6'5", 234, who I feel would be an ideal fit on the third line. With Eetu and Anton Lundell, a powerful north-south drive the net winger with nice finishing abilities. He's getting close to 20 goals this season here. He's had 2 prior seasons at 20-plus goals, and 16 of his first 17 goals this year were 5v5 goals. So that's something that Nick talked about earlier, those 5v5 goals being very crucial and important to the Panthers. Let's go around the horn here. Guys, just give me your guy quickly, 30, 45 seconds. Whoever wants to go next.
I'll go last.
John, Nick, whoever wants to jump in.
John, you want to go
I'll
first?
Go right
all right.
I'll go. Either way,
right, perfect.
It's fine. No, the one thing, I agree with you, Kirby. We need some size. Whoever we get on the trade deadline, they need to have size. I think one of the things we've seen over the years is the teams with size usually do pretty well in the playoffs, i.e. Vegas, i.e. Tampa Bay. So if I had to specifically, pick, I would say somebody of the likes of Adam Henrique, who, brings that. He's a center. He's a versatile player.
Some
and
skill
Zito seems to like those types of guys that you could play multiple positions, multiple places. So like a guy like Adam Henrique seems just like an obvious fit.
For sure. Nick?
Sounds good. Thank you, John. So I know there's reports going around saying this guy's going to resign. I don't care. I will not stop pounding the table for this guy until either the trade deadline is passed, he is traded to another team, or he is resigned. I want Nick Seeler, 6'2", 6'3", relatively big defenseman.
You've given us this name.
Yes.
Okay.
Leads the league in block shots. And I'm
goodness.
not going to stop with it. We just talked about it, Kirby.
I need another write-up from you other than Nick Seeler.
Okay.
He doesn't have a twin.
If you want a forward from me, I'll go Anthony Duclair. Shouldn't cost too much in terms of asset-wise or cap-wise with the trade deadline cap space. We're familiar with him, and again, could just fit right into the top 9, and a guy we're already familiar with, and has that playoff experience that we gained last year. So
we got to talk about him next time with the contract situation and all that, Cody, where he's already been traded from the Panthers.
But for my guy, Panther fans, this name's going to be a little bit of shock to you. You're talking about size. You're talking about cup-winning skill. Or not, cup-winning experience. I'm sorry. But this guy, when you're talking about size, is his main strength. John's probably going to groan when I say this, but this guy scored the goal back-to-back years to end our season.
Ooh.
Give me Mr. Pat Maroon.
You know what? I like that. I really do. You imagine Pat Maroon on this team? Holy moly!
Him and Montour would have to get up because Montour called a fat Pat about 13 times.
Yeah, I'm gonna send a video of that later to someone that was requesting it actually. So it's funny that you said that. But guys, thank you for all of that today here. Those trade targets, we'll make sure to do some on our next episode. We're gonna have a special guest probably for episode 4 or 5 as well to talk a little bit more of the trade deadline. But Jon, I just want to thank you for your time here with us this evening. And again, everyone can follow you at Jon Acosta Music on Instagram and Twitter X, right?
Yes, that is correct.
That's
John
correct.
The best Anthem singer in
Acosta
the
Music.
game.
Any one of my handles.
Best Anthem singer in the game, yeah. So, and you're going to hear Jon's voice at the top of this episode and his music on the way out. So, again, I just want to thank everyone for giving us the thumbs up, 5-star ratings, all the shares, likes, and around social media. I really appreciate it. We appreciate it. And again, we're trying to bring you that best coverage that we can leading up to the trade deadline here, leading up to the playoffs and everything like that. So as we go out here, let's go Panthers.